For 35 years, I carried a name that was never really mine. My mother swore up and down that the man she introduced as my father, Charles Whitefield, was the one who had given me life. I repeated that story to myself every day growing up, because what else could a child do but believe the people she trusted most? But even as a little girl, I noticed the cracks. Charles and I shared nothing in common. His skin tone, his features, even his laugh felt like they belonged to a stranger. People would point it out too, an offhand comment here, a lingering look there, and each time, a quiet storm built inside me. By the time I turned 15, that storm became impossible to ignore. One afternoon, in a moment that still feels frozen in time, Charles looked me squarely in the eyes and told me something that shattered the foundation of my world. "I don't think you're my daughter." The words lodged in my chest like a stone. My mother denied it, of course. She brushed it off as nonsense, told me he was bitter, confused, trying to hurt me. But deep down, I knew the truth was more complicated, and far more painful, than either of them would admit. And it would take one simple DNA test, years later, to rip that truth wide open. Growing up under my mother's roof, the story of Charles Whitefield being my father was repeated so many times it became family scripture. Anytime doubt crept into my mind, she would hush me with the same line, "Don't let people put foolish ideas in your head. Charles is your father." End of story. But the problem was, Charles never acted like a father. He was distant, distracted, and cold. Birthdays passed with no calls, no gifts, not even a pat on the back. At family gatherings, I felt like an intruder at my own table, trying to squeeze into a chair that was never meant for me. And yet, as a teenager, I clung to the fantasy that maybe, just maybe, if I tried harder, if I looked past the differences, he would finally see me as his daughter. But the truth sat between us like an unspoken wall. His eyes never softened, his smile never reached me. I remember staring at myself in the mirror, wondering, if I don't look like him, if I don't feel like his child, then who am I really? That question haunted me through high school, through friendships, through every relationship I tried to build. And before I take you further, let me pause here to say, if you're gripped by this story so far, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications, because what comes next is the moment everything unravels, and you don't want to miss it. Because when I was just 15 years old, I finally confronted Charles about the doubts that gnawed at me. And his response was something I'll never forget. I can still see the day clearly, the faded carpet in Charles's living room, the smell of old coffee in the air, the way his hands trembled slightly as he folded a newspaper he hadn't been reading. I was 15, full of questions I couldn't hold back any longer. "Charles," I said, my voice thin but steady, "are you really my father?" For a moment, silence. His eyes darted toward me, then away, as though he'd been waiting years for me to ask. Finally, he exhaled, a sound heavy with something between regret and relief. "I don't think you are, Maya," he said softly. "I never have." The world tilted. My knees nearly buckled, my ears rang. The man I'd been told to love and honor as my father had just confirmed the darkest suspicion of my childhood. I ran home, tears blurring my vision, and confronted my mother that same night. She stood firm, her jaw tight, her eyes flashing. "He's lying. Don't you dare let him poison your mind. I know who your father is, and it's Charles." But something in her voice wavered. A crack, barely noticeable, but enough to keep me awake for nights afterward. If Charles wasn't my father, then who was? And why was my mother so determined to keep the truth buried? For years, that question sat like a thorn in my chest. And when I became an adult, I realized I had only one way to finally tear it out, by turning to science for answers. Because one DNA test would prove everything. By the time I turned 30, the doubts that had haunted me since childhood had grown unbearable. I had lived half a lifetime with a fractured identity, never truly knowing where I came from. That's when I decided to do something my mother had always feared. I asked Charles Whitefield to take a DNA test with me. He agreed, almost too quickly, as if he wanted the truth just as badly as I did. When the results came back, there it was in bold, undeniable print, 0% chance of relation. It was both devastating and liberating. Devastating because the man I was told to call Dad was nothing more than a stranger. Liberating because, finally, I had proof I wasn't crazy. My instincts had been right all along. But proof of what wasn't true didn't tell me what was. So, I ordered a DNA kit for myself. Weeks later, a box arrived at my door, small, ordinary, almost unimpressive. Yet inside was the potential to change everything. When the results came back, I pored over the names and matches. Third cousins. Distant relatives. Family trees that made no sense. The answers I craved seemed buried beneath a mountain of confusion. And just when I was ready to give up, a friend introduced me to someone who would change the course of my life forever, a stranger who called herself a search angel. Before I take you deeper, let me pause. If this story has pulled you in, make sure you hit that subscribe button and tap the bell, because what happens next is where the real drama begins. Because within just 3 weeks, this search angel uncovered something I never could have imagined. The woman who called herself a search angel was nothing short of a detective with wings. She had helped dozens of people untangle the knots of their family trees, using DNA matches, public records, and the kind of persistence that only comes from a heart on fire for the truth. I handed her my results, feeling both hopeful and terrified. Could she really find the man my mother had spent decades erasing from my story? Days passed. Then weeks. And just when I was losing faith, my phone buzzed with a message that made my stomach twist. I think I've found him. She laid it out carefully, almost like building a puzzle piece by piece. A man named David Ellison. One of 12 siblings. His family tree overlapped with my DNA matches in ways too precise to ignore. The search angel's words cut through me. Maya, I believe David is your biological father. I stared at the screen, my heart racing. His photo sat in front of me, a man with eyes startlingly similar to my own, a smile that felt hauntingly familiar. But doubt still gnawed at me. Could it really be this simple after years of searching? I knew I couldn't rest until I heard it from his own lips. So, with trembling hands, I reached out. I sent a photo of my mother, decades younger, asking if he recognized her face. When David replied, his words stopped me cold. He claimed he knew her. And that was only the beginning of a revelation that would shake the last 35 years of my life to the core. When David Ellison wrote back, I stared at his message until the words blurred. Yes, I remember her, he said. We met, more than once. My breath caught in my throat. For years, my mother had insisted she didn't even know this man. Now here he was, saying not only did he remember her, but their paths had crossed multiple times. Still, memory wasn't proof. I needed certainty. I needed science to tell me what my heart was too afraid to believe. So, I asked David to take a DNA test. The wait was agonizing. Every email notification made my pulse jump. And when the results finally came in, I couldn't bring myself to open them alone. With trembling fingers, I clicked, and there it was. 99.9% match. David Ellison wasn't just a possibility. He was my father. I felt the ground shift beneath me. For 35 years, I had been walking around with a lie stitched into my very name. Now, with one test, my entire identity had been rewritten. And before I go on, if you're still here with me, it means this story has pulled at you. Please take a moment to like this video, subscribe, and share it, because what comes next isn't just a reunion. It's the kind of moment that changes not just one life, but an entire family. Because once the truth was undeniable, there was only one thing left to do. I had to meet him, face to face. And when I finally did, the first words out of his mouth weren't what I expected. The day of our meeting, my hands wouldn't stop shaking. I must have checked my reflection in the mirror a dozen times before walking into that quiet little cafe on the edge of town. My chest tightened with every step. Would he accept me? Would I even recognize him as mine? And then I saw him. David Ellison. My father. He stood as I walked in, his eyes locking onto mine as though he had been searching for me his entire life. His smile was cautious, almost fragile, but there was something in it, a warmth I had never once seen in Charles, that told me this was real. "Maya," he said softly, as if trying the name on his tongue. "You look just like I thought you would." I wanted to collapse into his arms, but instead I froze, caught between decades of anger and the overwhelming pull of belonging. We talked for hours, about his life, his 12 siblings, the nieces and nephews I never knew existed. For the first time, I felt like puzzle pieces were snapping into place. But not everyone welcomed the truth. My mother, when I told her, flat out denied it. "He's lying. We never even met," she insisted, her voice sharp and final. Yet David claimed otherwise, saying they had crossed paths 3 times in those early years. I was trapped between 2 versions of reality, and both couldn't be true. And the deeper I went, the more I realized this wasn't just about finding my father. This was about uncovering a family secret my mother had spent decades trying to bury. A secret that, once revealed, would change everything I thought I knew about her. In the weeks that followed, my life became a blur of phone calls, visits, and introductions. David welcomed me into his home as though I had always belonged there. He showed me photographs of birthdays I had missed, graduations I should have attended, family gatherings where my chair had always been empty. The weight of 35 lost years pressed heavily on me. Sometimes, late at night, I'd cry for the little girl who had spent her life chasing love from the wrong man. But those tears slowly gave way to something else, gratitude. Gratitude that I had been given the chance, even now, to rewrite my story. David and I grew close, not just as father and daughter, but as friends. We laughed about the quirks we shared, we argued over the smallest things, and we built memories to make up for the decades we'd lost. As for my mother, her denial never faded. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe fear. Or maybe some secrets are just too heavy to admit. I may never know. But here's what I do know, the truth, no matter how painful, is always worth uncovering. And sometimes, one small test can open the door to a whole new life. If this story moved you, don't leave without subscribing, liking, and sharing, because there are countless others searching for their truth, and together, we can remind them, it's never too late to find where you truly belong.